going to be talking about multiplying and dividing radicals. So the first half of the video will be multiplication. The second half of the video will be division. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right, so first things first, anytime we're dealing with multiplication or division, we make sure we do outside with outside, and then we do inside with inside. So what I mean by outside, I mean outside the square root and then inside the square root. So let's take this example. If I had 2 square root 3 times 4 square root 5, my outside numbers are these. So that'll give me 8. And then my inside numbers are these. 15. Okay? So when you multiply, that's pretty much what happens. Okay? And then if you have the opportunity to simplify, you'll do that. I do want to also remind you that anytime you have a square root that's multiplied times itself, it equals just itself, because the square root of 7 times the square root of 7 is the square root of 49. And we learned in class today that the square root of 49 is just 7. Okay? Also, the same thing happens with multiplication and division. But I also want to remind you that just how we multiply these two to get our 15, if necessary, we can split those two to get something that we need. So for example, let's say I have 2 square root of 3 over 5 square root 3. Any number over itself, actually, I'm not going to say that way. I'm going to do it this way. That's the same thing as saying 2 times square root 3 over 5 times square root 3. These cancel each other out. So I'm just left with that because they match, okay? That's going to come in handy in just a few moments. Let's get into some actual problems. So let's do this first one. Square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is the square root of 25. And then the square root of 5 times 2 is a positive 2 square root of 5. You don't multiply the inside, because remember, technically this is a 1. And you multiply the outside with the outside. So that's 2 times 1. And then since there's no other inside, it just kind of hangs out right there. This is your final answer. Nothing too crazy, not too difficult. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do this one over here. Excuse me. So now we have some outside numbers, and let's go ahead and do this. So I got to multiply my outside numbers. Negative 2 times negative 5 is a positive 10. And then I got to multiply my inside numbers. This square root of 6 times this square root of 2 is a square root of 12. Okay? And then we have to do negative 2. We're going to go that way. Again, this is an outside number, so negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. And then that square root of 6 just comes along for the ride. But because we have this this 12 here, we have to see if we can break it down, because we got to make sure, we always check to make sure it can or cannot be broken. 12 breaks down into 4 and 3. 3 is prime. The square root of 4 is 2. So that goes with that. This 3 is still under the radical, so that 12 is no longer there. So our answer to this first part is going to be 20 square root of 3 minus, and then 6 only breaks down to 2 and 3, so that's as far as it goes. Negative 8 square root of 6. Okay? Now, let's get into some of these where from Algebra 1, you learned how to FOIL and you learned how to do the box method. I'm going to show both just so you can pick which one you want. And remember, actually, let's keep going. Remember that earlier in the video, I talked about how a square root times itself is just itself. So let's take a look at what happens right here. Square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is just 5. Okay? Because that would end up being square root of 25, which is 5. That's that first number. And then square root of 5 times 5 square root of 2 is going to be plus 5 square root of 10, because that 5 times that 2, and then the 5 is just on the outside. And then I'm going to do square root of 2 times square root of 5 is square root of 10. And then finally, square root of 2 times 5 square root of 2, that's going to be plus 5 square root of 4. What is the square root of 4? That square root of 4 happens to just be 2. So this ends up becoming 10 by itself. All right, so let's combine all of our like terms. So we have a constant here. We have this 5 and that 10, so 5 plus 10 is 15. And then I have this 5 root 10 plus this root 10. And remember, that's really a 1 out there. So that ends up becoming 6 square root 10. Okay? And if you need to see it in the box, it will look something like this. You'd have square root of 5 and a positive square root of 2. Then I'd have a square root of 5 over here, and then a 5 square root 2 right here. In this top left box, square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is just 5. Square root of 5 times the square root of 2 is square root of 10. And then square root of 5 times 5 square root 2, that's going to be in this box 5 square root 10. And then 5 square root 2 times 5 square root 2, this is 5 square root 4. But 4, it breaks down to 2. So 5 times 2, that's 10. And then we're going to add our constants. That's a constant, that's a constant, that's 15. And then I'll put a 1 there so I don't forget. Add my 5 root 10 plus my 1 root 10 is my 6 root 10. That's what it looks like in the box, okay? Let's go to this one over here. Let's go ahead and do my distributive. As a matter of fact, why don't you go ahead and pause the video right now and give this one a shot. Go ahead and pause it. Now that you've had the time to attempt to do this one, let's see if we got the same answers. So let's go ahead and do some multiplication. 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. 4, and then I'm going to do 4 times 5 root 5. That's going to be 20 because I multiply the numbers on the outside. Root 5 just comes along for the ride. And then I'm going to do 5 times square root of 5 times negative 4 is negative 4 square root 5. And then I'm going to finally do square root of 5 times 5 square root of 5. That's going to be plus 5 square root of 25, but square root of 25 happens to be 5. So this whole thing right here just equals 25. Now, what I would have done, I'm going to go ahead and erase this. It's going to be the same answer. As soon as I notice that this square root of 5 and those are the same, I'll just say, oh, that's just going to be 5. And I would just set 25 right here. Okay? Means the same thing. Now let's go ahead and combine our like terms. We got this negative 16 and a positive 25. That's going to be a positive 9. And then I got 20 square root of 5 minus 4 square root of 5 is going to be positive 16 square root of 5. And that is the answer for that one. Now let's jump into division, okay? So just like when we multiply, we combine them to make bigger numbers, we can split them. In this particular case, on this very first one, we don't have to split them because there are perfect squares. Because the square root of 16 happens to be 4, and the square root of 4 happens to be 2, and then 4 divided by 2 happens to be 2. Okay? Piece of cake. But let's pretend we didn't know that, right? Another option we could have done is we could have done 16 is the square root of 4. I'm going to do this a couple of ways. 16 could have been done the square root of 4 times the square root of 4 over the square root of 4, right? And one of these would have canceled out with one of those, leaving me with just the square root of 4, which happens to be 2. And if you wanted to go really extreme, and let's say you didn't know any of this, you could have done 16 is square root of 2 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 2. 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8 times 2 is 16. Over, and then 4 is square root of 2 times square root of 2. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Those are all 2 times 2. All of those make 16 on the top. Oops. And let me go ahead and put this back. JK. And then 2 times 2 is 4 on the bottom. And then what you could have done is cancel those two with those two, leaving me with the square root of 2 times the square root of 2. And anything, when you have a square root that you multiply times itself, you end up with just the answer of 2. So, of course, the top one is much more simple, but you can break it up, split it up, however you see it to get your answer. With that being said, let's move on to this one. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break down 80. Yeah, I'm going to break down 80 to see what I can get. And the first thing that comes to my mind when I do 80 is 4 and 20. And the square root of 4 is 2. So I'm going to take that out. I'm going to break down 20. That's 4 and 5. Oh, square root of 4 is 2 again. And then I have this 5 remaining right there. And then on the top, I happen to have 15. Well, can I split 15 so where it can cancel something on the bottom? Yes. Square root of 3 times the square root of 5 on the top. Now, is there something on the top that could cancel something on the bottom? Yes. This square root of 5 can cancel with this square root of 5, leaving me with square root of 3 on the top. I don't know why my pen is doing that. Over 4 on the bottom. That is your final answer. That is weird. Okay, let's do this next one, and hopefully my pen will stop acting weird. All right, I think I figured it out. There it is. Okay. So 125. First thing that comes to my mind is 5 and 25. 5 is prime. And 25 is a perfect square, which happens to be 5. So I'm going to take this 5 out, and I'll put the other 5 over here. And then on the top, I'm going to break my 20 into the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. Now, can we cancel anything? Yes. Those can cancel each other out. And the square root of 4 happens to be 2. So my answer is going to be 2 over 5. Okay. Let's keep going. Oh, we got numbers in front this time. Okay. We can deal with that. So I got 4 square root of 5. And this ends up becoming 2 times the square root of 16. Well, square root of 16 happens to be 4. Which leaves me with 4 square root of 5 over 8. Well, we can reduce, remember how earlier I said the outside with the outside, inside with the inside? 4 over 8 reduces to 1/2. So my final answer is square root of 5 over 2. If you want to put the 1, you can, but it's not necessary. It's not mandatory. Okay? Here are the last two. As soon as I can get this thing to zoom out. Just kidding then. Oh, there they are. Here are the last two. I want y'all to pause the video and attempt to do both of these right now and see if you get the right answer. Go ahead and pause it now and then check with me when you get done. All right? Now that you've had the opportunity to pause the video, let's see if we get the same thing. Okay? First thing I see is 27. I'm going to go ahead and break that down. My first thought is 9 times 3. Oh, the square root of 9 happens to be 3. I'm going to put that on the outside. So this ends up becoming 3 times 2 is 6. And I have the square root of 3 under the bottom. And 6, I'm going to split into the square root of 2 times the square root of 3. And these square root of 3's are going to cancel, leave me with the square root of 2 over 6. Hopefully you got that. And the final question we're going to do is number 10. Hopefully you got this one right. Let's see what you did. Well, 32, let's go ahead and break that down. My first thought when I see 32, I think 8 and 4. The square root of 4 is 2. Let's go ahead and take that out there. Let's break 8 down. 4 and 2. Up, another 4. Take that 2 out. And then this 2 stays on the inside right here. So I have 2 times 2, which is 4 times 5 is 20. Square root 2 over the square root of 2. Remember, there's really a 1 sitting out there too. Okay? Now I'm going to cancel the square root of 2's out. And my final answer is going to be 1 over 20. Now, if you would have broken down 5 square root 32, you will still end up with, if you did this, 16 and 2, square root of 16 is 4. You still would have ended up with 20 on the outside and 2 under. So in case that's what you saw. Okay. That's about it for multiplication and division. If you have any other further questions, see me in class. Have a good day.